This is what I mean about just sitting in the hammock when you're in porch mode. Now, if I was out in the woods and not in my backyard, I'd just be watching the rain hit leaves. This is how I like to sit in porch mode under my tarp. So a quick tip here for when you're pitching your tarp on the ground like this and you don't have a friend to help you, if it's just you and it's solo, it can be kind of tricky. The best way to do it, let's just imagine that the wind is just howling this direction, all right? Well, normally what I would do was take this end of my ridge line and I'd run out a little bit of line and I would stake it down. That way the wind is blowing your tarp this way, but it's not blowing it away. And what you want to do in this wind is grab one of these corners, come out with your line 3 or 4 feet and stake it into the ground firmly but fairly, and maybe do the same on the other end. Then your tarp should be down like this. Then grab it and pull it up and go ahead and run out your end ridge line and get that in the ground. Even better is to loosely stake out the 4 corners. By that I mean run the line out 3 or 4 feet, kind of loose, so that at least you can get your ends up in the air. Because if you try just to do the ends, your tarp will just keep falling over. Tarping is something that takes practice. So if you get out in the field and get a little discouraged, spend a day and practice pitching your tarp in various configurations. It's fun and it's dorky, and people will mock you for it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the continual ridgeline, or some call it the continuous ridgeline. You can see the ridgeline is running over the top of the tarp here. It's hooked onto the D-rings with prusik knots, which means you can loosen your tarp up on this line and then tighten it up, like so. Like so. You do that from both ends. Tighten your tarp right up. That's mainly handy for hammockers. Hammockers? That's mainly handy for people that use hammocks, because then they can center their tarp over the ends of their hammocks. Now, I personally don't use the continual ridgeline. I tried it. Just wasn't for me. No particular reason. I just like going off the ends of my D-rings. I can center my tarp fine that way, along with the adjustments of my hammocks. Come see, come saw. Do what you want to do. Que sera, sera. However you tarp, you tarp. So the prusik knot slides up and down the line and has pretty good hold. I have 5 wraps on that knot. So, shall we tie that prusik knot up close? Some people call it a prusik knot. I just can't bring myself to say that. That's like saying Mexico instead of Mexico. We're going to tie the prusik knot, and that is about, that's probably 3.5 inches from here to here. So I've just made a little loop called a bite. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around my cord now, and like making a lark's head, I'm going to come through it and loop here. Now I like my knot to be up toward my ridge line. We're going to make a series of loops. If you'll just focus on these little loops here, I'm going to just keep looping through the middle. Alright, we'll try to keep these little end loops as clean as possible. So now you see I've wrapped it twice. I'm going to wrap it again. That's 3 wraps. You can just keep spreading it out like that. That's 4 wraps. Alright, and then try to get your wraps so that they go to the inside of the knot and stay neat. Nothing better than a neat knot. Alright, spread that out. And I'm going to do one more wrap just because I'm in the mood for 5 today. Just because you're watching. We got 5 wraps. Just like that. And then I'll pull it tight. Give it a little pull. squeeze my wraps in, pull it tight, and that's the knot that will slide up and down the line, the prusik or prusik knot. Now to hook the tarp from the D-ring to the continual ridge line, which is this part, it goes to my prusik knot. I use an S-beaner right there that hooks right to my tarp D-ring. That makes it really easy for me to hook this system up. Now this is the end of the ridge line I put on first with the continual ridge line. I go around the tree and I have a S-beaner just hooked onto my line there, and I just hook that right around my line. And we'll go to the other end and tighten it off. So I come to the other end. Since I don't have a tree here, I'm just going around a J-hook. Let's use our imaginations and pretend that's a tree. I'll go around the tree. I'm going to come back to this loop I've tied here. It's a knot called the trucker's hitch. And yes, I'm going to show it to you up close and personal. I'm going to come through my trucker's hitch with this line. And again, this acts like a pulley system. And I'll go back to the tree, tie a slippery half hitch or two. Tie a slippery half hitch or two. That's a knot that's good for you to learn while you're out in the woods, cause that knot's gonna do you some good when you're hanging your tarp. Yeah. For that trucker's hitch, I'm gonna take my line, and here's the end of my tarp right there. This way's going back toward the tree. I'm gonna make a loop, like so. I'm gonna grab my line, come back through it, make this knot right there. That's going to be my pulley system. Come to the loop I made with my line coming from the tree, which is this hand. I'm going to go back through that, and then I can pull that towards the tree, and that tightens up the tarp. We pull this back toward the tree, and then I tie my slippery half hitch once or twice. If you tied that trucker's hitch correctly, when you're done, you can simply just pull the knot through, and like a magic trick, it disappears. Learn it, use it, it's a great knot. Become a trucker. Drive that 18-wheeler. What's going on out there, good buddy? Now, one of the best ways to kind of hank your cord up, I like hanking my cord, is I do this sign. Yeah. And I grab my cord, and I'll do what is called a figure 8 wrap. I'm just going to hold that end up here just to keep it there, and you wrap sort of a figure 8 type wrap. Goes on a while. Anyway, when you're done, you could simply wrap your cord up like that. And it's real easy when you take your cord out when it's done. It's a really good way to do it, and it's not going to prevent knots, because nothing prevents knots, but it helps keep the knots to a minimum. So what is a snakeskin? This is a snakeskin right here. This is half of one. There'll be two halves on my tarp that will come together, that wraps my tarp up so I can have it deployed over me and not put it out if I want to, and it makes your tarp a little easier in high winds to set. You can just let out one half at a time. Mine is made out of mosquito netting, but you can make it out of sil nylon, anything you want. Okay, so I'm all done in the locale I'm in, and I want to pack my tarp up. Generally, I grab my two corners, and I kind of give them a light roll like this, and I'm pretending it's really windy, so I'm keeping the other end of my tarp staked down. And I pull my snakeskins on like this. And you can kind of see that my tarp is sort of secured. So now all I got to do is do that on the other end. Let those go, and if it's really windy, I just have that much tarp flapping, pull my snakeskins in. So I use that same figure 8 knot of wrapping up my guy lines when I'm not feeling too impatient. When I'm packing my tarp away on the trail, I wrap it like that. Then what I do is I just put a couple of wraps on, and I slip this right back through my D-ring and just kind of hook it. And that keeps it fairly well wrangled when I stuff it into my snakeskins. So now I'm pretending that it's not a windy day. I pulled my stakes, my tarp's laying loose. I'll come to this end. I just kind of bunch mine up, pull one half on, come to the other end. As you can see, My guy lines are not wrapped up. Little dirty secret about Shug. I barely ever wrap mine. I just let them flop free. I know! I feel a little shameful. Take all of them. I sort of toss them in like that. Give it a little twist. Sometimes you get a little snakeskin bubble here. Kind of do that to it. It ain't a perfect science. And then I'm going to take my end that has the bungee cord, wrap that over that end a bit, cinch it down. Having it in mesh does not really help your tarp dry out, even if you hang it on the back of your pack. There's only so much surface showing. Believe me, I've tried. I know. I've been there. I did it. It didn't work. Good idea, though. Nice to think about it. Didn't work. So the really cool thing is, if I'm at camp and I have my hammock pitched and I don't want to deploy my tarp, yet I think it might rain, I just do this and it's just hanging over me ready to go. So when I do want to let my tarp out, I'll just slide back one end of my snake skins. Again, if it's windy, I'm only dealing with one end of the tarp. They're out like this, and then I go to my staking. This is just the way I like to do my tarp. Great thing about tarps, play with your tarps, figure out the way you like to do it. I don't care if you use clothesline or however you do it. A couple of people have already asked me, do you need a fancy tarp? No! Go to Walmart or any home store or your hardware store, get a 10 by 10 plastic tarp like you throw over your wood pile, run you a line. I don't care if it's clothesline, any kind of string you got, put it between two trees, get it as level as you can, throw your tarp over that, sort of tie it off, work the best way you can, get your tarp rigged up. It's a little heavier, but you got a tarp to get out there, so you got no excuse not to get out there. But I got a link below of where you can buy some. So check that out if you want yourself some snakeskins for your tarp. And if you don't, I don't mind. Just wad it in a bag. Cool by me. This is my little tiny tarp sack that I made for that tarp. And my tarp with my snakeskins will fit into the bag. Now I got my snakeskin here. And I'm just going to kind of do a little back and forth accordion fold on it. Like that. And just cram that into my stuff sack. If you don't use a snake skin or anything and you're wondering if you fold your tarp or cram it, well, I'm no expert, but a lot of people say if you keep folding your tarp in the same place you get a line. I'm a crammer. Just cram it in there. And there you go. Everything's right in there. That's about 11 ounces of tarp, snake skin, and line. Shug, can you use your snakeskins with a continual ridgeline? Why sure you can there, YouTube viewer. You just pull them this way and your ridgeline will just be over the top of your snakeskin. And when you deploy, same thing. It is still on the top. So that's how that works. Storm is coming, wind is blowing. You got your tarp pitched. Let's pretend the wind is just whoo, blowing through the end of your tarp. Now I designed this tarp so that I could close my ends off to stop the blowing rain or the wind a bit. Now if I really wanted, I could get those more closed, but I'm doing a lot here. Just be lucky I did that. And if we go around and look inside, and I have hung this way in the hammock, I've still got a fair amount of room in there. It is a little tighter, but that is the tarp life. Hey, you ever stayed in a little small one-man tent? Now that's tight. This will really keep the wind and the rain off of you. I could do both ends if I needed to, but I never have. And I know you're saying, Shug, could you tell us how you did that? I'm going to show you. These are 2 Grosgain tabs I sewed right into my seam line there. Hey, they've really held. I did back them with just a little something there to support it. And I have one right here too, just in case I needed to do this in. They're about 24 inches from the corner of my tarp. Again, I put those in roughly 20 to 24 inches, and that was just a guess, but that worked well for me. So I'll just run a line down from one to the ground, and then I could just take my guy lines and just cross them and form my doors there. That's truly a handy feature on a tarp. There's just going to be times where you set your tarp up and it's blowing against the side, the wind shifts, and you do get one of those rains that may blow in. Good enough to go do that. Usually I do it for the wind. I've never had but one time rain really blow up under my tarp, and it was just one of those crazy storms that was so big that I actually took my hammock down quickly and packed it in my backpack and just kind of waited the storm out. So when you get to camp and it's a rainy day and you get there and you're a tarp camper and you use a hammock, what do? Well, really, just however you carry your tarp, try to have it as handy as possible. Get to camp, get your tarp up, get under your tarp, hang out. If it's a really big storm, don't put your hammock and your underquilt and stuff up yet. Just hunker down and wait it out, and you can get under there and get situated. But just wait and take shelter and enjoy being in the woods, because that's what it's all about. I mean, woo, buddy! Well, that's about enough for me. I got some other stuff to do now. Like I say, if you have a question, ask me. If I know the answer, I'll show it on video. If I don't, I'll just pretend you didn't ask me. All secure in Sector 7, hunkered down for the night. Tarp life, it's a good life. It's a good life, like my good wife.